A simple woman in a plaid shirt helps a stranded millionaire with his broken luxury car on a desert road. Their worlds couldn't be more different, but when he notices the unique ring on her finger, everything changes. It's a connection neither expected, but one that would alter both their lives forever. Alexander Covington tapped his fingers impatiently against the steering wheel of his 1967 Mustang Shelby GT 500. The turquoise vintage beauty, normally his pride and joy, had betrayed him in the middle of nowhere, about 30 miles outside of Sedona, Arizona. The sun was beginning its descent behind the dramatic red rock formations, painting the desert in hues of orange and gold. "Perfect," he muttered, loosening his silk tie. His phone showed no service, and he hadn't passed another car in at least 20 minutes. Alexander wasn't accustomed to being helpless. As CEO of Covington Enterprises, one of the nation's leading technology investment firms, he commanded respect in boardrooms across America. Yet here he was, stranded in the desert, his jacket growing damp with sweat despite the car's open windows. He popped the hood and stared at the engine, his expensive leather shoes gathering dust. Classic cars were his passion, a private indulgence few knew about, but his knowledge was aesthetic, not mechanical. This solo drive was meant to clear his head after a stressful acquisition in Phoenix. Now it was adding to his problems. The distant rumble of an approaching vehicle lifted his spirits. Alexander straightened his posture and raised a hand as an old blue pickup truck slowed to a stop behind his Mustang. A woman emerged from the driver's side, mid-30s, slender but strong, with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her red plaid shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing tanned forearms. Worn jeans and dusty boots completed her ensemble. She approached with confident strides. "Car trouble?" she asked, her voice tinged with a slight local accent. "Yes," Alexander replied, reflexively adjusting his cuffs. "It just died on me." The woman nodded, moving past him toward the open hood without hesitation. "Mind if I take a look?" Alexander stepped aside, studying her as she leaned over the engine. Her movements were precise, professional, nothing like the tentative poking he'd been doing. "I'm Alexander," he offered, extending his hand. "Clara," she replied with a smile, briefly shaking his hand before returning her attention to the car. "Clara Jensen." "Do you know much about cars, Clara?" he asked, immediately regretting how condescending it sounded. Clara's lips curved into a small smile. "A fair bit," she answered, not looking up. "This is a beautiful machine. 67 Shelby, right? You don't see many in this condition." Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know your classics." "I should. Fixed up enough of them over the years." Her hands moved expertly over the engine components. "Ah, here's your problem. Your fuel pump's gone out. Common issue with these old beauties." She straightened up, wiping her hands on a rag she pulled from her back pocket. "I've got some tools in my truck. I might be able to get you running enough to reach town, but no promises." As Clara walked back to her pickup, Alexander found himself intrigued. In his world of polished executives and calculated conversations, her straightforward manner was refreshing. There was something authentic about Clara Jensen that caught his attention. A quiet confidence that had nothing to do with status or wealth. The desert wind kicked up, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. For the first time since his car broke down, Alexander felt grateful for this unexpected detour. "You're not from around here, are you?" Clara asked, returning with a worn toolbox. She set it down next to the car and began rummaging through it, pulling out various wrenches and screwdrivers. Alexander leaned against the Mustang's fender. "That obvious?" "The suit's a bit of a giveaway," she replied with a small smile. "Not many people drive through the desert in Italian wool." She was right, of course. Alexander looked down at his tailored suit, now spotted with dust. "I'm from New York. Just finished some business in Phoenix." Clara nodded, already focused on the engine. "Hand me that socket wrench, would you?" she asked, pointing to her open toolbox. Alexander complied, watching as she worked. Her movements were confident and efficient. Nothing wasted, nothing for show. The setting sun caught in her hair, highlighting strands of auburn among the brown. "So what brings a New Yorker out to the middle of nowhere in a classic Mustang?" Clara asked, her voice slightly muffled as she leaned deeper into the engine compartment. "I collect them," Alexander admitted. "This one's a recent acquisition. Thought I'd take it for a proper drive before shipping it back east." Clara emerged from under the hood, a smudge of grease on her cheek. "Some people would call that showing off," she teased. "I call it appreciation," Alexander countered with a smile. "These cars deserve to be driven, not just displayed." "On that we agree," Clara said, returning to work. Nothing sadder than a beautiful machine gathering dust in some collector's garage. Alexander watched her hands, strong, capable hands with short, practical nails. "You seem to know what you're doing. Are you a mechanic?" "Was," Clara replied, her focus still on the engine. "Worked at Jensen's Classic Auto in Flagstaff for 12 years. Family business. And now?" A brief shadow crossed her face. "Now I'm figuring things out. Taking a break, you might say." Something in her tone discouraged further questions on that topic. Alexander respected her privacy and changed the subject. "Lucky for me you were passing by," he said. Clara glanced up at him. "Lucky for both of us. I could use the distraction." The honesty in her voice surprised him. In his world, people rarely admitted vulnerability, especially to strangers. "How'd you learn all this?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious. "My uncle," Clara answered, her expression softening. "He raised me after my parents died. Taught me everything about cars. Said understanding engines was like understanding life. Complicated at first glance, but logical once you learn the parts." Alexander nodded. "Sounds like a wise man." "The wisest I've known," Clara agreed, a hint of sadness in her voice. She worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the metallic clinks of her tools and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Alexander found himself oddly comfortable in this silence, watching the desert landscape shift colors as sunset approached. "There," Clara finally said, straightening up. "That should get you to town. It's not a permanent fix, but it'll hold." "I appreciate this more than you know," Alexander said. Clara wiped her hands on her rag again. "Let's see if she starts before you get too grateful." Alexander slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life. The sound brought a smile to both their faces. "You're a miracle worker, Clara Jensen," Alexander called over the engine's rumble. Clara shrugged, but her eyes betrayed her satisfaction. "Just an old skill coming in handy." "You should follow me to town," Clara suggested, closing the Mustang's hood with a firm push. "That repair won't last forever. There's a garage in Sedona that can handle classics. I know the owner." Alexander nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Lead the way. I'd offer to buy you dinner as thanks, but I'm guessing you're not the fancy restaurant type." Clara raised an eyebrow. "And what type am I exactly?" Alexander realized his mistake immediately. "I didn't mean—" "Relax," Clara interrupted with a small laugh. "You're right. I prefer places where they don't charge extra for the atmosphere. There's a decent diner in town. Nothing fancy, but the food's good." "Sounds perfect," Alexander said, grateful for her easy forgiveness. They drove in convoy as the desert landscape darkened around them, the rocks transforming from vibrant red to deep purple shadows. Alexander found himself watching Clara's taillights with an odd sense of trust. In his world, people always wanted something from him: his money, his influence, his connections. Clara just wanted to help. The diner was exactly as he imagined: vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of coffee and grilled onions. They settled into a corner booth, Alexander looking somewhat out of place in his expensive suit. "You're getting looks," Clara noted, amused as she scanned the laminated menu. "I'm used to it," Alexander replied, though usually for different reasons. After they ordered, a burger for Clara, club sandwich for Alexander. A comfortable silence fell between them. Alexander studied her across the table. In this light, he noticed the fine lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and squinting into desert suns. Her hands were capable but feminine, with a single ring on her right hand that caught the light when she moved. "So, Alexander from New York with the expensive suit and the vintage Mustang," Clara said, breaking the silence. "What's your story?" Alexander hesitated, unused to such direct questions. "I run an investment firm. Technology mostly." "That explains the suit," Clara said, "but not why you're really out here. Alone." Her perception startled him. Most people were content with surface details. "My mentor died last month," Alexander admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "Heart attack, 72 years old. He was like a father to me after my own passed away." Clara's expression softened. "I'm sorry." "He loved the desert," Alexander continued, the words coming easier now. "Said it reminded him that some things are timeless. I thought driving through here might help me process things." Clara nodded slowly. "Grief needs space. The desert's good for that." "What about you?" Alexander asked. "You mentioned taking a break." Clara sipped her water, considering her answer. "My uncle died 6 months ago. The family business." She paused. "There were complications. I needed to step away." Their food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. As they ate, Alexander noticed how Clara's ring glinted under the diner lights. It was unusual, not flashy or expensive looking, but distinctive. Antique silver with an unusual pattern etched into its surface and a small, unusually cut blue stone. "Interesting ring," he commented casually. Clara glanced down at it, a fond expression crossing her face. "It was my uncle's. His good luck charm, he called it. Said it reminded him that life has a way of coming full circle." Alexander nodded, his attention returning to his food. But something about the ring nagged at the back of his mind. Something familiar he couldn't quite place. The diner was clearing out as their meal wound down. Alexander checked his watch. Nearly 8:30 p.m. He'd need to find a hotel for the night and arrange for his car to get proper repairs in the morning. "So this garage you mentioned," he began, but stopped abruptly, his attention caught by Clara's hand as she reached for her water glass. The ring. Under the harsh fluorescent light, he could see it clearly now, the intricate pattern of intertwined leaves surrounding a small, uniquely cut sapphire. His breath caught in his throat. "That ring," he said, his voice suddenly tense. "May I see it?" Clara looked surprised, but extended her hand across the table. "Sure." Alexander's fingers were almost trembling as he gently turned her hand to examine the ring. The pattern was unmistakable, a design he knew intimately, one he had seen nearly every day for 20 years. "Where did you say you got this?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "From my uncle," Clara replied, watching his face curiously. "Henry Jensen." "Henry Jensen," Alexander repeated, the name hitting him like a physical force. "Your uncle was Henry Jensen." Clara withdrew her hand slowly, her expression guarded now. "You knew him?" Alexander sat back, his mind racing. "Henry Jensen was my mentor. The man I told you about. The one who died last month." Clara's eyes widened, disbelief clear on her face. "That's not possible. My uncle Henry died 6 months ago." They stared at each other across the table, the ambient noise of the diner fading away. "Henry Jensen," Alexander said carefully. "CEO of Horizon Innovations until his retirement 15 years ago. Lived in Manhattan. Collected rare books and vintage watches." Clara shook her head slowly. "No, my uncle Henry owned Jensen's classic auto. Born and raised in Flagstaff. Never married. No children. Alexander pulled out his phone and brought up a photo, sliding it across the table. This Henry Jensen. Clara stared at the picture. An older man with silver hair and kind eyes, standing next to a younger Alexander on a yacht. Her face paled. "That's my uncle," she whispered. "But that's not his life." The waitress appeared with their check, but neither noticed her. Alexander thanked her absently, his focus entirely on Clara. "He had this ring made years ago," Alexander said quietly after the waitress left. "I helped him design it for his 70th birthday. I've never seen another like it." Clara twisted the ring on her finger, her brow furrowed. "He mailed this to me about a week before I got the news. The note said it was important that I have it." "A week before his heart attack," Alexander murmured. "Heart attack?" Clara looked up sharply. "The police said it was a car accident." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. "Clara, I think we need to talk somewhere private." Clara nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "My place isn't far from here." They paid in silence, both lost in their thoughts. As they walked to their vehicles in the parking lot, the desert night had fully descended. Stars sprayed across the black sky in breathtaking profusion. "Follow me," Clara said, her voice subdued. "It's about 20 minutes." As Alexander climbed into his Mustang, he glanced at Clara's truck, seeing her silhouette illuminated briefly before her door closed. The woman he'd met by chance on a desert road had just become the most important person in his investigation of Henry's death. An investigation he hadn't even known he needed to conduct until now. 3 months later, Alexander Covington stood in the newly renovated garage of Jensen's Classic Auto, watching Clara direct her small team of mechanics. The business had been transformed. New equipment, expanded service bays, and a growing clientele of vintage car enthusiasts from across the Southwest. The safety deposit box had contained documents revealing the truth. Henry Jensen had been in witness protection for 15 years after helping federal authorities build a case against financial criminals. His deaths had been orchestrated to protect Clara and Alexander from people who might have sought revenge. The coordinates had led them to a hidden cache containing the full story and a substantial amount of money Henry had set aside for them both. "The Corvette's ready for pickup," Clara announced, approaching Alexander with a smile. She'd kept the ring, but now it hung on a chain around her neck, a reminder of the man who had connected them and the mystery they had solved together. "You've done amazing things here," Alexander said, gesturing around the garage. "We both have," Clara corrected him. Alexander nodded in agreement. His investment in Clara's business had been the easiest decision he'd ever made, not just because of Henry's wishes, but because he'd recognized in Clara the same qualities his mentor had valued: integrity, determination, and remarkable skill. "Staying for dinner?" Clara asked, wiping her hands on a shop rag. "Wouldn't miss it," Alexander replied. He'd been commuting between New York and Sedona for months now, unable to stay away for long. As they walked toward the office, Alexander thought about how a chance encounter on a desert road had changed everything. The simple woman in a plaid shirt had turned out to be anything but simple, and the connection they now shared was deeper than either could have imagined. Sometimes the most life-changing journeys begin with a broken-down car and an unexpected helping hand. Sometimes the most powerful statement is expectations. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join our community of viewers who appreciate stories of quiet strength and unexpected talent. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from our global audience. Everyday people are underestimated based on appearance, gender, or background. Have you ever been in a situation where you surprised others with your hidden talents? Share your experiences in the comments, and remember, the most powerful skill isn't just expertise, but the quiet confidence to stand your ground when others doubt you. Until next time.